First of all, thank you, Father Barron, for your ministry, and thank you to Mr. Warner for the opportunity to ask this question. Father Barron, one of the first things that got me interested in watching your videos on YouTube was the intelligent manner in which you approached answering questions with reason and sincerity. As you have stated before, the Catholic faith reverences reason and the relationship between faith and reason. I do wonder, though, in my own life and in the broader scope, about that relationship. I have noticed that rational and reasonable approaches are great and have given me the opportunity to explore further and discover a fuller faith, but they are not the whole picture. Could you speak to this relationship and possibly to the threshold, if you will, where one must accept certain truths on faith when their reason has reached its limits? Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point, is that faith and reason relate just that way. Faith happens at the edge of reason. As reason reaches its own limits, it then gives way, and you begin to glimpse something which you can't control in principle, but you can be open to. And I've used the example often of getting to know a person. You can know a person through reason to a very large extent, but finally, you don't know that person's heart at all unless you're willing to listen as she speaks. And then you've got to make an act of faith, of trust. Do I trust what that person's telling me? Or she reveals some truth about herself that you could never in principle have grasped on your own, but yet you come to know it and you say, yeah, that's true, and that's an act of faith. So faith, I've often said, is not a surrender on the near side of reason, but on the far side of reason. And that's the Catholic understanding of it. So it's never a sacrificium intellectus, as they say, a sacrifice of the mind. Whenever you're doing that, you're doing something bad, because God gave us minds and wants us to use them. So faith is never a sacrificium intellectus. It's fides quaerens intellectum. It's faith that seeks understanding. So I think that's very important. And the language of threshold is good, the liminal moment, when reason reaches its limit. There are more things in heaven and on earth than are dreamed of in your philosophies, Horatio, as Shakespeare's Hamlet says, quite rightly. That your philosophies are great, but gosh, there are more things that lie beyond the threshold of reason. And that's where faith comes into play. It's easily confused with superstition or naivete, but it's not that. It's a surrender on the far side of reason. So that's the play, and that's why the Church always speaks of fides et ratio, faith and reason. It never wants to put reason to bed. It wants reason to be elevated and then transcended.